Good evening, everyone. I'm Arlene Baxter, the first Vice President of the Hillside Club, and it is my pleasure to be here this evening, November 1st, 2021, to welcome our new resident manager, Ellen Dougherty. We are so pleased to have you here. And this is an auspicious night for other reasons too. It is All Saints' Eve. It is Samhain. It is the beginning of a new year for some people. So it seems an auspicious beginning to welcome Ellen here to the club.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here.
Delighted. So as some of you who are familiar with the club know, this is a very unusual job. It's a resident manager position. There aren't many of those. It's a combination of so many aspects, from moving chairs and furniture, public relations, artistic direction, balancing budgets, ordering supplies, you name it, there is something at the club that our resident manager will need to do. So the most unusual aspect, I think, is in fact the resident part, and we're delighted to hear that in your background you've had other resident positions. Tell us about those.
Yes, I came to California initially because I got hired to work at a Buddhist retreat center in the Santa Cruz Mountains. And I applied for that job because it looked fascinating, a really compelling combination of interpersonal contact, greeting people, and also learning about managing community organizations and nonprofit organizations. And the opportunity to do all of that professionally while also living in a redwood forest was really compelling to me, especially at the time, because I had just finished graduate school in New York City, and this seemed like a fantastic adventure to go on. And I applied for the job, and they interviewed me over Skype, and they hired me, and a couple of weeks later I moved from New York to the Santa Cruz Mountains. And I spent 2 years living and working at a Buddhist retreat center, and then I spent over 5 years working for the Quaker Center in Ben Lomond, also right near Santa Cruz.
And also in the woods.
Also in the woods,
yes.
On 80 acres of redwood forest. It was a beautiful, beautiful, unique place. It had formerly been a settlement for a family, and that family donated it to Quaker organizations after World War II. So when the Quakers initially started going there, they would just go camp during the summer, and what was there was orchard and a couple of houses, and over the years they built it up to include all of these buildings and to open it up to more people. So it was my job to do outside rentals for the Quaker Center, all while living on the land with the other staff members. And it was really a unique experience, I think. It's hard to describe. When I would introduce myself to people, or they would ask me what I did for a living, I said I worked at a retreat center in the mountains, and I lived there. They'd have all kinds of questions about what that must be like, you know? I think sometimes they imagined I was a lumberjack of some sort, or I was just like sitting meditating on a mushroom all day, like, who knows? But trying to describe it is hard, because it is a unique experience, a magical experience, but it is also still a job. And I felt a similar way when I walked into this building for my interview, because this building is so beautiful. It's like, oh, I'm familiar with this feeling. This is going to be really fascinating, and it's still going to be a job.
And it's still going to be a job. We only have one redwood tree for you, not acreage. But as you've already experienced, it is a beautiful setting.
Yeah.
But our focus, of course, is on this building and our members and other people who will be using this beautiful building. We feel so fortunate that Ellen comes with a really unusual special training from the Pratt Institute. Tell us about your historic preservation background.
I was very lucky while I was in graduate school working on my master's degree at Pratt. I was also working at 2 different organizations on the weekends, greeting visitors, doing educational programs. I worked for the Lefferts Historic House in Prospect Park in Brooklyn, and I worked for the Japan Society on the east side of Manhattan. And oddly enough, while I was learning about historic preservation and the history of the discipline itself, at the same time I was working one place, a historic building that was moved from one location to another in order to save it, and another modern work of architecture that was just on the edge of being declared a national landmark. And so we would have these discussions about the relevance of different kinds of architecture. We would have these discussions about communities supporting institutions and how vital they were at the same time that I was working in these places that were developing those communities and being supported by them. And it was really a pleasure to interact with people who came to love those organizations and support those organizations. And even just being here, you can sort of see that same energy from volunteers and club members who have already come forward with ways of supporting me transitioning into the job, but also ways of activating the space in the club and making events happen and coming forward with ideas for all these new events. And so it's very exciting. But one thing that I really valued about my education is that at the same time I was reading about the work that it takes to preserve a building and or preserve a tradition. I was working in places where people were actively doing that. And I'm looking forward to working here because I get that same feeling from the community here that they're really pushing to keep this place relevant so that it's viewed as necessary by the entire community.
Absolutely.
Because that's what ensures its long-term preservation.
Exactly, exactly. And we're so fortunate that here in Berkeley there are a lot of people who are very keyed into historic preservation and also keeping a building like this relevant within the community as an asset. So I hope that we will have a chance to have more of those events that some of our members mentioned. I'll just say, if you have programs or events that you think might be appropriate for the club, obviously our resources are limited, but the more volunteers we have, the more members we have, the more vibrant our club can be and make the job even more exciting for Ellen.
Yeah, I think I'm really looking forward to playing that role of providing just a stable base of support for members to be creative and use the space in new ways of being able to be that hub of communication among people, to guide everyone with just like the practical aspects of these kinds of projects. I think it's going to be really exciting.
Wonderful. Well, we are so happy to have you here. We look forward to having you here for many years to come, and want to give a warm welcome. If you're around, send an email, let Ellen know that you are welcoming her. And of course, we look forward in the new year to having many more events in person when we can all be here together and enjoy our beautiful clubhouse. With that, thank you so much, Ellen, and welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.